Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it is yet again like minus 5,000 degrees outside. So I'm happy to be inside and podcasting with you. How are you?
Doing good. Got myself a new ice scraper. The world could not be better for me right now. It's an amazing thing how much ice you can scrape off of a car with an ice scraper. It's tremendous.
I have three words for you. I have three words for you, sir. Treat yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And really, I did not go out and buy one. My mother-in-law just gave me her second one. So
but now she doesn't have a backup. Like, what happens? Think about how bad you'll feel if her primary ice scraper fails in some, catastrophic way.
It's fine. That's her fault. Don't give up your backup. I did not mention this when we talked about ice scrapers on the last show, but previous, like the car that I got rid of, my first ice scraper was the old license plate from my previous car until I got an actual ice scraper because, winter descends on you. You don't know it's coming. There's no way to tell. And one day your windshield is frozen over and it's like, what do I have? I have an old license plate in the trunk. Let me use that. And it worked tremendously.
That seems like an incredibly good way to scratch the ever-living crap out of your windshield. Did that actually work, or did you scratch the ever-living crap out of your windshield?
It worked. And because I view it as like when you recycle goods, you upcycle stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I once also upcycled after like a foot of snow. I had no snow shovel, but what I did have was an old waste basket from an office I used to work at. So now, did I go out and shovel during the day when people could see me? No, I had to wait for the cloaking hours of darkness to go shovel out my driveway with a waste basket. And let me tell you, Tom, no handles on that. Not great for the back.
That sounds like maybe literally the worst idea I've ever heard. So it's on brand. I will give you that. That's good.
It was a long time ago. I was a much younger person, not much dumber, but a little. But you learn from experience. And now, Tom, what I have done is I have fashioned a handle onto my wastebasket.
You're basically MacGyver.
Basically, I don't want to give myself too much credit, but I do have a hockey ticket, a match, and this pen. And with it, I can do almost anything, including writing something on a hockey ticket and then setting it on fire.
Including getting into the heart of the show, I hope, soon, quickly.
Speaking of hearts, Tom, boom, Brian Hartline, Ohio State's wide receiver coordinator, was named Ohio State's passing game coordinator. Did I say he's wide receiver coach, named passing game coordinator on Monday to Sunday. And so a lot of people are like, oh, wow, well, what does that mean? And one, it means more money. Two, what a passing game coordinator may also be doing is focusing during the week on stuff like third downs and red zone stuff and just different incorporations of passing schemes that they prefer. It just depends on what the head coach wants from them or what the purpose of the title is. With a guy like Ryan Day, who knows more about passing game than pretty much anybody. I don't know how much Brian Hartline is going to give him there, but I think now there's more opportunity for him to express his thoughts and give his input and really, Tom, it's to keep guys happy, to keep coaches happy. It's not always just about money. It's also about hearing what they have to say and then incorporating that into the offense. So maybe that's part of this as well.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there are plenty of cooks in the Ohio State offense's kitchen in terms of input on how the offense goes, because your offensive coordinator is going to have some say in that, and your head coach, if he is from that side of the ball, is going to have some say on that. But this is probably an indication that Brian Hartline's input is valued and will be taken into account. Certainly, I don't, this is not Brian Hartline is going to be calling plays during passing situations or anything like that, but it's more of a during the week thing. It is also more of a, here's another way we're going to show you how much we appreciate you with money. And by giving you a new title, therefore, then it's not like, well, why would you give someone I haven't seen the final numbers, but let's say, why would you give someone a 30% raise in the span of 1 year? That's hard to justify. Well, not if they got a promotion, Tony. If they got a promotion, then you can give someone a 30% raise. It's like, well, they have additional responsibilities. So that, I think it's safe to say that probably factors in there somewhere as well. But anytime you're giving someone a promotion and a bump in pay, that is a pretty good indication that that person is a valued member of your staff and you'd like to keep them around. And by all accounts, Brian Hartline wants to stay around. So that's probably good news for Ohio State and its wide receivers and wide receiver recruiting for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and that was something that Brian Hartline said back in November, that never say never, but he can't see himself leaving Ohio State. And he doesn't really have the offensive coordinator urge that a lot of guys have, where if you're not moving up, you're dying. And that's just how it kind of is viewed in the coaching world. Like, well, why aren't you trying to reach the top of the ladder? How are you able to teach your players to strive and strive and strive if you're okay just being a position coach? And a lot of these guys, that's really what they want to do, and that's where they're happiest. And a lot of so many times you see coaches that climb the ladder end up wishing they hadn't, and then you're out of a job, or you're no longer where you wanted to be. You've given up something that you love for something that you thought you were supposed to do. And I think Brian Hartline understands what he enjoys doing and is in a position to just do that. And so he's able to, if you want to give me some more money, fine. You want to give me some more input, that's perfect. I'm okay with more responsibility. I love it. But I also really, really enjoy coaching receivers, and in shopping for the receivers that I get to coach and all of that good stuff. And so, this is a guy who there were people saying, well, Marcus Freeman's going to come get him. Oh no, Marcus Freeman, he's going to come get Brian Hartline. And I don't know if this was just to head that off at the pass, but this was something that for as well as he has done, he deserves to be rewarded for it.
Well, I mean, the conversation we had about Greg Stiguara last week, and it's like, well, the recruiting is kind of fallen flat in places, and there's questions about depth, and how is the talent level at the beyond the top level? How is the talent level going to be next year, and all that kind of stuff? You have none of those concerns about Brian Hartline's room, like not even a little bit. It's just like, which of the 3 to 4 very best wide receivers in the entire nation is he going to bring in next year? And then the biggest question is, how do you get them all the ball at the same time? Because that's something of a challenge. But you can, at that point, you're just kind of like picking, here's the best guys. And if someone leaves because you have you have the next 3 or 4 guys from the next year ready to come in and step in. Like, there's no concerns about depth at wide receiver. There's no concerns about production at wide receiver. The recruiting's been going great. The NFL pipeline is flowing freely, and they'll probably add another couple first rounders to the tally for that room. So, this is the most, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, there's nothing wrong in the wide receiver room right now. So just keep everything going as it needs to. Cause it's just, there are places where, Ryan Day may have to be a little more involved in recruiting and that kind of stuff. He can't do that everywhere. Wide receiver seems like it's a place, like it's just like, Brian Hartline's got this. It's fine. Like, don't worry about it. You're going to get the best of the best every year and not even have to think about it.
I thought it was interesting. Bill Green did a video talking to his South Florida Express guys, and he asked them about Brian Hartline, and they said Brian Hartline's basically the face of Ohio State in recruiting. And that tells you a lot there. I would say, what's the worst thing about Brian Hartline? What's the one failing he's had is losing Jameson Williams? I mean, is that it?
But he lost Jameson Williams because he also had Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and Jameson Williams saw that Jackson Smith-Njigba was also coming. And I mean, we try not to traffic in hot takes on this show, but I would say Jackson Smith-Njigba has worked out okay for Ohio State so far. So, well, I don't, there are plenty of problems in other rooms that we can talk about at various points, but like, the problem in Brian Hartline's room is, what if they have too many All-American caliber players to play at the same time? What a concern that might be. Like, if that's your problem, like, I'm not sure you actually have a problem.
Well, I mean, it is a problem, Tom. And I didn't see Jameson Williams fumbling the ball into the end zone in the Rose Bowl. Just saying. Just going to say that and leave it and change the subject. Now, Tom, we have not yet gotten a chance to talk about the transfer of Oklahoma State safety Tanner McCallister to Ohio State. He watched some of the Notre Dame game, watched some other stuff to see exactly who he is, what he does, and he's more of a slot corner, inside safety type of guy, a Marcus Williamson type. Was what do you have, like 42 tackles this year, 41 and 42 tackles this year, and about the same last year. 42 tackles this year, 1 interception, 1 tackle for loss. And last year it was 41 tackles in 11 games, 2 tackles for loss, and 5 passes broken up. He's one of their 5 defensive backs in Oklahoma State. He's a 2-year starter. They had 3 defensive backs who were first or second team All Big 12. He was not one of them. I think he is a 3-time academic All Big 12 guy. I know a lot of Buckeye fans were super excited because it's a new safety and it's something, and it's losing Lathan Ransom, because I don't expect him back at any point in the early portion of next year. So having somebody else come in is significant. Somebody who knows the defense. And Tom, I kind of see him almost as being one of the guys who's first in line for a lot of the defensive stuff to show everybody else how it's done. Like when any of the coaches use the veterans in practice to show them the drills, and then the young kids watch. Like, I think he's going to be used that way. But he's also at a position where I don't know who's competing there yet, and that's another issue that we'll be talking about all offseason long with this Ohio State defense.
Yeah, that cover safety spot's an interesting position because Marcus Williamson was there, and Marcus Williamson is definitely not back next year, so that's safe to say. Cam Martinez is probably there, but we saw some Cam Martinez this year, but I don't think he was ever like a 60 snap a game guy. So he's someone who I think they're high on him, and I think they definitely want to keep him around. But having someone who knows the Knowles system and can sort of help translate with those guys, that I think is going to be very valuable. And if he's the best player on the field, like, great, play him. If he's not, that's fine too. I don't know that this is, I don't expect that this is something where he was guaranteed a starting job to transfer or anything like that. So, you've got at the very least, it provides some depth in the back end of that defense. There are so many guys in that safety room that it's like, well, where exactly are they going to fit? And, we've talked about a bunch of them, but like Andre Turrentine, Jansen Dunn, like those are guys who we really didn't see this year, who are probably fitting in somewhere. You've got Josh Proctor still coming back off the leg injury. Lathan Ransom coming back off the leg injury. And there are a couple different safety spots back there. We don't know exactly how they're going to divide those up, because this is, the bullet is now gone, I think, safe to say. But, is there going to be a deep safety, a cover safety? What's the third defensive back position going to be, other than the 2 outside corners? That's a little bit TBD. I've talked to Ross Fulton about that in a couple of the morning scoop shows. We'll have him on again later this week to probably talk about it a little bit more, because it's a really interesting question, but I don't know that we have a firm answer yet on any of that stuff. And, maybe we'll get a little more from Knowles when we get to talk to him, probably early on National Signing Day, probably. But even then we'll go into spring practice and not really know, because, well, it's too early to say. Well, we're still working some things in. And so that's going to be kind of one of the great unresolved questions probably for quite a while this spring. And you're probably going to hear quite a bit about it. But, Tanner McCalister, if he can just be that guy to, provide some experience with the Knowles defense, some insight in the Knowles defense, help those guys get started, help get everyone up to speed, and potentially be at least a rotational player, if not a starter there at that cover safety spot, like, great. That seems like a pretty easy choice. And I think they're losing a lot of players off of that Oklahoma State defense. So they're probably going to take a pretty substantial step back. So the opportunity to go to Ohio State and potentially compete for a Big Ten championship next year, and, the college football playoff and beyond, like that seems like a pretty good deal for him too.
Yeah. The safety situation. Why not? Why not try to start and land a job? Because We saw in the Rose Bowl, it was Court Williams and Cameron Martinez were two deep safeties at times, and Bryson Shaw was obviously back there as well. And just no idea how this is going to shake out. Jalen Johnson, who knows what's going to happen with him next year. Kai Stokes, like where are all of these guys? Who is the boundary safety? Who is a field safety? Who is the slot corner safety, cover safety? Like there's so many questions, and you've got a lot of obviously athletic guys who can fit some different things, but I think that's something that probably needs to be settled by the end of spring. That way everybody can just go into the off season, into the summer, knowing what they do and preparing to get that done. Tom, the Buckeyes landed a commitment from Hero Kanu at the All-American Bowl on Sunday. Or was it Saturday? It was
Saturday.
This weekend. Saturday. Yeah. Because Sunday obviously is for the NFL. But so he committed to Ohio State. It was not a surprise, but there were concerns that the Larry Johnson situation might throw some questions in there. But I think the understanding is he has already signed, is what everybody suspected, and then he went ahead and just announced his commitment. The 105th rated player overall, number 18 defensive lineman from Rancho Santa Margarita, California, but really from Germany, 6'5", 293 pounds, just a very big athlete who is probably grew up playing soccer time. I don't remember all of the interviews. I think you guys were there in the summer a lot, watching the camps, but big athlete, just touching his potential as a big time college football defensive lineman.
Yeah, he's someone who was pretty impressive at camp and was even more, he was impressive in camp in the, wow, that guy's pretty big and he moves very well especially for someone his size. And when you take into account that, he really is, Germany is not exactly an American football powerhouse, development factory. So, he's been in the U.S. for more than a year now and is, came over kind of as part of a program about, becoming a more proficient football player. So he's not brand new to the sport or anything, but he's someone who I think, the athleticism, the size and speed and quickness, that's a really intriguing combination. He is going to play the nose. I talked to Mark Givler on Monday's morning show about Kanu, and he's, I said, he, as Mark was describing him, I'm like, this sounds a lot like Tyleik Williams. And I think, he's not as big as Tyleik was coming in. Tyleik needed to lose a little weight when he came in. Kanu probably needs to gain a little bit. I think he's in that 300-ish range, and it's probably, you're going to want to get him up to 315, something like that. But, he has all the pieces you'd want there. He was, when he was at camp over the summer, he was with a group tour, a group from Europe kind of that was like touring the Midwest and going to all these different camps and trying to get offers for all these kids and all that. And Kanu was there on maybe a Tuesday or something like that. And with the rest of the group. And then the rest of the group went to Michigan. And Kanu stayed in Columbus for an extra day to work with Larry Johnson again. It was like, I think I see where this one is going. And that is in fact where it went. So yeah, he's a really intriguing prospect. You never expect like nose tackles to just immediately be impact guys year one. Tyleik Williams had a nice season, but that's a hard place to hold up as a true freshman. Kanu's also only 17 years old, so he's really young. So you may see a little bit of him this fall, but it may be like a 2023 kind of thing before he's really, really ready to contribute. But when he is, there is a lot of talent there. And I think he may be someone who becomes a fan favorite in Columbus because let's be honest, that's an awesome name.
Probably an easy NIL deal with maybe like Schmitz down in German Village, something like that.
Any kind of sandwich shop seems like a good option. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Any sort of boat livery. I mean, you got a lot of options. And his first name is Hero, Hero, just like superhero. His last name is Kanu, but it's not spelled like the boat. It's Kanu. But radio spots, man, it'll work great. It'll translate great in radio spots. So
the irony is like Subway does not make any sense for him. Like Subway is a sandwich and also a boat. But it doesn't really fit
Subway's a boat?
A sub. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yes, got it. I was going to say, I'm not sure you're familiar with the various forms of transportation in major metropolitan areas.
Underwater or underground. Tom, let's not talk about that. Let's not dwell on any more of my stupidity again. So that gives Ohio State 4 defensive linemen in this class, perhaps 5 if Gabe Powers grows into it. Caden Curry, watched him again in the All-American game, and that dude is just he's always impressive. He's very quick. I can see him being an instant impact kind of guy. He's going to be undersized, I guess, because he's never as big as people say. When he was a defensive tackle last year, it was clear like he's not ever going to be like this 285-pound guy. But he's so quick and he's so strong and he's so relentless. That's why I've kind of compared him to John Simon in the past. And I think he can be a guy that just from his persistence and pain in the buttness of just his the way he just keeps coming after the quarterback and coming after the football. I could see him getting involved next year on the outside. They've got a lot of defensive ends and not a huge number of defensive tackles. I know there's some talk on the board about maybe Tyler Friday moving inside, but again, so many moving parts with this defense, including with the defensive line. I don't think they're super deep on the interior. I think they've got enough guys, but you can't really afford to lose guys. And then maybe Hero Kanu can step in, or maybe like they need Ty Hamilton and Mike Hall, these guys to all blossom, because yes, they're all talented in their own way, but now they need to produce because it's not as deep as it's been.
No, it's definitely not as deep as it's been, but it's also, I mean, to your point, this is not like crisis point right now. You got Jerron Cage and Tyleik Williams and Hero Kanu at the nose, and you've got Teron Vincent and Ty Hamilton and Mike Hall at the 3-tech, and so that's a reasonable combination of guys. And you're probably is Amari Abor going to play inside? Is he going to play on the edge? Does Caden Curry kick inside? He's probably not. He could do that later in his career, but probably not yet. But you've got, you have options there. You also, the transfer portal is an option as well. Bring in a veteran guy there somewhere to just kind of at least provide some depth, or provide some rotational opportunities if some of the younger guys aren't quite ready yet. But I feel like we saw enough of Ty Hamilton this year to feel like that might be, he might be ready to do it. I'm just sort of perpetually waiting for Teron Vincent to kind of take that next step. He's sort of stayed on the field better this year. So that's progress. That's good for him. But and Mike Hall, I got the sense that if Mike Hall had not played 4 games, he might have played in the Rose Bowl. That he was that was the time when he may have been ready to play, but they just kind of wanted to preserve that year of eligibility for him. But they are very high on him as well. So yeah, it is a class that the interior of that depth of that line is, it's not at any kind of a crisis point by any means, but it's like they could use another body in there if they could get it. But if you're going 3 deep and you're comfortable with those 3 guys to a certain degree, like that's not a problem, certainly. But we'll see. Again, we'll see what Jim Knowles thinks when he gets here, because we don't know all of the NFL declarations, which may impact kind of the edge players more than the interior. But where are all these guys going to go? Can Tyler Friday come back? If Tyler Friday can come back and he can kick inside, like, well, okay, that's one more body at the 3-tech spot. I mean, they have options. They have bodies. This is not, this is more fine tuning than complete overhaul, I think.
And I also think when they go with their 3 down lineman look with the Leo behind them, you can put any of JT Tuimoloau, Zach Harrison, or Tyler Friday on the edge as a what would have been a defensive tackle, but now becomes like a 3-4 defensive end, because they're all big enough and strong enough. There is one guy still out there in the recruiting world, Christian Miller out of Georgia, number 19 defensive tackle, talks a good game in terms of what he likes, but but I think Ohio State is still in the picture. I'm not putting him in the class by any means. It just seems like if he wanted to be a Buckeye, he'd be a Buckeye by now, and it'll take something special to get him out of the South. And I think, yes, he's still out there, but I don't see that one happening, Tom. I think that the class as it stands right now is pretty well set on the interior or on the defensive line, unless they go take a flyer on somebody else.
That's kind of what I'm thinking as well. And Mark and Kevin both talked to Christian Miller down in San Antonio last week, and said he is a super charismatic guy. A lot of fun, good, fun, fun to talk to, fun to hang out with, fun to and very charismatic. But people get called game players in recruiting a lot, and he's someone who I think enjoys the recruiting process, shall we say, and enjoys having multiple fan bases intrigued by him. It sounds for all the world like Georgia is still the favorite there, and he was wearing a lot of Ohio State stuff and talking a lot about Ohio State during the course of the week. And Mark said honestly he would feel better about Ohio State's chances if Christian Miller was wearing more Georgia stuff, and just the misdirection of the recruiting, that fun part of recruiting with a little misdirection. It doesn't sound like he's likely to join Ohio State, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Mark said on the morning show today that I think Ohio State might be a little higher on their chances with Christian Miller than Mark is with their chances on Christian Miller. But as Bill Green says, even the game players have to sign somewhere. Like eventually the game stops and you have to sign somewhere. So he's going to be a Georgia Bulldog or an Ohio State Buckeye or something else in just a few weeks. And Ohio State's still in that conversation, and they would, they would love to land him, but it doesn't sound like that's the most likely outcome right now.
Yeah, when these uncommitted guys are wearing school colors, it's a little bit like the middle hat curse of hat science, where the you put the middle hat out front and center. Look at this hat. Hey, everybody, make sure you look at that middle hat. And it's like it's almost never the middle hat. They just want you to see that first, and then they're gonna, you didn't suspect I was going to take the one on the right, did you? And that's what they do. A couple other thoughts on the All-American Bowl. Again, Caden Curry, he had at least one sack in there and was in the backfield a lot. Keon Grays had one catch where he it was like a double move on a route and completely debacled the corner, and it was an underthrown ball, or else he would have scored. Like I've said it before, he reminds me completely of Chris Olave, but on that route he reminded me also of Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I guess whatever. But we've seen him so much as a deep threat in high school, and then as we've mentioned this past summer, played a lot of the slot in the 7-on-7 stuff to get used to whatever he's going to be used at Ohio State. I think he's still going to be an outside receiver, but a technician, impressive as always, and a guy who we'll talk more about it in the next show. I certainly don't see him redshirting.
No, he seems like someone who, he's got a couple different places he could play, a couple different spots he could slot in at this year, which is what they want. They don't necessarily want that. They're not recruiting that 5'9" slot guy anymore, because that just hasn't really worked out that well. So you're when you bring in someone like Grays, he fits. You as you said, he kind of reminds you of all three of their current wide receiver or their 2021 wide receivers, that's kind of what Brian Hartline does. You want a guy who can slide in, go into the slot, go play outside, like Garrett Wilson did at various times during his career. Yeah, he seems like he looks like an Ohio State wide receiver. That's about the best way I can put it. He looks like an Ohio State wide receiver. He looks like someone who is going to probably not take terribly long with Brian Hartline to look like someone who's contributing to the Ohio State wide receiver unit. And again, that does not mean starting against Notre Dame, but that means contributing at some point during his freshman year, and then sophomore year when Jackson Smith and Jigba is likely gone. Potentially Julian Fleming could be gone after next year. I mean, you have a number of guys who are far enough into their career now that they could be headed off to the pros after that. He may be kind of that next group when Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka are the old heads in that room. Keon Grays can be the young up and comer.
Devin Brown, quarterback, also in there. A couple of offensive linemen like George Fitzpatrick and Hinsman were in there as well. But Devin Brown did not have his offensive line did not give him much time to throw the ball or much time to even look into the defensive backfield. But he's a guy who can escape. He obviously has a strong arm. I really like just the decision to come to Ohio State and compete is something you want out of the quarterback. Tom, before we go, it is Alabama versus Georgia for the national title tonight. I am taking Alabama. They were very, very good against Georgia the first time. Can they be very, very good against them the second time? I think so. You look at what Georgia's defense has done against everybody, and it's been really good. Alabama puts up over 7 yards per play against them. No other teams this season have put up over 5 yards per play, except then Cincinnati did it as well. And so now I'm thinking, this Georgia defense, baby, has been figured out. And Alabama will continue to figure it out. Also, for the idea that you need a quarterback that can win you a national championship, can compete, can defeat national title contenders. I kind of need Alabama to win to continue to prove that point, because if Stetson Bennett wins it here, now obviously he has the defense that is kind of the qualifier to that. If you don't have an NFL guy at quarterback, you better have an NFL defense, which Georgia sort of has that. But until Nick Saban loses, I'm always going to pick Nick Saban. That's where I am.
Yeah, and I talked myself in circles on this game last week for a while, and it just there's nothing you can do that is dumber than picking against Nick Saban. And in the national championship game, there's nothing you can do that's dumber than picking against a team with by far the better quarterback. And I just watched these two teams play, and Alabama won by a couple scores, and still it's like I can't get over the feeling that Alabama played its best game against Georgia, and Georgia maybe didn't play its best game against Alabama. And we may have seen the best version of Alabama. It is certainly a closer game in this one than it was the last time. I think Georgia's going to attack this Alabama offense a little differently. I think they might have been a little passive the last time. I think maybe get a little more aggressive. I think Georgia wins. And I recognize I'm picking against Nick Saban. I recognize I'm picking against a better quarterback. It feels like Georgia is kind of due to kind of put it all together. And I don't think Alabama can do what they did the last time.
You don't think Georgia is just completely wrecked from their semifinal game against Michigan, where the Wolverines gave them everything they could handle? There could not be anything left of this Georgia team after Michigan got done with them, just devouring them the way they did. You think Georgia actually has something left?
Yes.
Tom, no way. After what Blake Corum did to them, after what Mike Sainristil did to them, you think Georgia has more for Alabama?
I kind of do. Both of those teams were head and shoulders better than the teams that are playing in the semis. That to me was pretty clear. It just feels like Georgia now knows what doesn't work against Alabama and is going to be able to do something else. And they have the personnel to get to Bryce Young. I'm not super high on the Alabama offensive line. They got a couple guys who are banged up. No John Mechie this time. It just feels like that's going to be just enough that you can kind of focus on Jamison Williams in the passing game, bracket Jamison Williams, bring a little bit more pressure. I don't think Alabama's going to be able to run the ball against them. So if you bracket Jamison Williams, I don't think they're getting to 40 this time. I don't know that they're getting to 35 this time for Alabama. If this game's in that 31-27 range, I would pick Georgia. So that's where I think this ends up.
And I know earlier I mistakenly mentioned that Georgia's defense had given up like over 5 yards per play against Michigan. Obviously, that is not the case. They did not play a ton.
Yes.
So
you said Georgia gave it. Georgia gave it up against Cincinnati. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. But again, Alabama will win because that's just what happens. I mean, this is the world we live in. This is the simulation that we are all a part of, Tom, and you cannot deny it, even though you trying to deny it. But I'm sorry you feel that way.
Well, I mean, going back to December, whenever someone asked us, like, who should Ohio State fans root for? Ohio State fans should root for Alabama. Like, that's just the status quo. If Georgia wins, that potentially changes some stuff, and you're changing the conversation around Georgia a little bit. If Alabama wins, it's just like, yeah, I mean, just throw another trophy on the pile. It doesn't matter. Like, whatever. Those would be Nick Saban's sixth at Alabama? Seventh? I mean, it's like, yeah, exactly. Like, whatever. Matter. It doesn't matter at this point. It's like, he's already the greatest coach in college football history. One more trophy is not going to change anything. So,
nope.
Whatever. Just go ahead and yell Roll Tide, and it'll be fine. And just, I mean, don't think of it as rooting for Alabama. Think of it as rooting for the chance to laugh at Georgia and, hopefully get to hear Alabama fans do the 1980 chant at the end of the game.
But still, even at the end of the game, Georgia fans, even if they're losing by many, many points, will still be chanting SEC. So look forward to that one. That will do it for this episode, Tom, unless you have anything else.
Nope.
Okay. That will indeed do it for this episode. I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. As always, find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. Hit the subscription bell there. You can now rate us on Spotify via the mobile app, not necessarily via the desktop. So go ahead and do that as well. 5 stars only, please. It helps others see us. And again, whatever podcast platform you're using, if you can rate and review us, please do kindly. So we want to thank you guys for that. Have a good day. We will talk to you guys later.